Yeah.
Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Council for Monday, June 16th, 2014 to order. We will begin with an invocation, which I will lead, followed by the singing of the national anthem, which will be led by Councillor Papp, and I would ask all who are able to rise. Dear Lord, give us this day your strength and courage to do your will. Grant that the members of Pelham Town Council demonstrate humility, listen with an open mind, and show wisdom in all their deliberations and matters of business placed before them. Bring to this council honor, trust, and dignity to work on behalf of all the people of the town of Pelham. Amen.
Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patron all, in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. First item of business is the approval of our agenda for this evening. It has been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that agenda for the June 16th, 2014 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any amendments or changes to that agenda? Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if I could include in the agenda an item under approval, under reports of councillors. It's 13.1.2 on Communities in Bloom.
Councillor Papp, you'll second that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Is there, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. Any other changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question on the amended agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as amended. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest. And I wonder if any members have any conflicts that they need to declare. There are none. So can that be so noted in the minutes, please, Madam Clerk? Now we move to hearing of presentations and delegations. And the first, we have a delegation from the members of the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee, represented by their chair, Judy Reed. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And to members of the committee that have joined you there in the front row, thank you very much.
Thank you. And good evening. Mary Augustine and councillors, it's most fitting to be providing an update from the Pelham Senior Advisory Committee as June is Seniors Month. I'd like to provide a bit of background because I am bringing an update to you on the Senior Advisory Committee for Pelham, and so I'd like to set the framework and then follow through with the update. And I'm going to forewarn you that as most presentations coming to council, there's an ask at the end, so stay tuned. In the fall of 2013, the Town of Council approved the following: the establishment of the Pelham Senior Advisory Committee, the terms of reference as prepared for the said committee, and the clerk be directed to advertise for membership of said committee. These actions were taken around the following rationale. A Pelham Senior Advisory Committee is in line with the town's strategic plan as it describes Pelham as the most vibrant, creative, and caring community in Niagara. This also supports Council's commitment, March 2011, to age-friendly principles based on the World Health Organization's definition of an age-friendly community as being inclusive and accessible, promotive, active, healthy aging. In addition, the World organization defines active aging as the process of optimizing opportunities for health, participation, and security, so as to enhance quality of life as people age. Progress to date. Following Town of Pelham policies and procedures, the Pelham Senior Advisory Committee was formed in 2014 as a volunteer committee. Presently, we have 14, have a membership of 14, and the front row of the gallery is a pretty good representation of the members. And in the brochure we provided tonight, you will see on the right-hand side the list of the members. And I'd like to just comment about that, because as you can see, we have an abundance of expertise, and we also have been very strategic in linking to the other Pelham advisory committees. So that's really part of our focus, making a stronger linkage. I'm going to say right up front that this committee knows there are lots of good things happening in Pelham for seniors. What we'd like to see more is more activity. We'd like to get more volunteering possibly, and we like more promotion. So we'd like to be that link, and not, as I want to clarify, that we don't want to take on or take over, okay? We're an advisory capacity to the town of Pelham, to you people, but at the same time, we want to make a stronger impact and have a stronger impact for the seniors of our community. We also have touched age friendly in our membership, because we have had a youth advisory representation, and I must say perfect attendance at every meeting, and some great input. So I think that stands really well, not only for our town community, but it does say how we can work as a age friendly, being friendly to all ages in our community. Our objectives are listed on the left-hand side. I'm not going to highlight those, because I'm going to go to how we streamline those into the next piece of our beginning of our strategic plan. Since March 2014, the committee has met monthly. We meet regularly on first Wednesday of every month, with the exception of July and August. And thanks to you people, we're allowed to have these facilities for our meeting. And we welcome the public to those meetings also. Are you looking, have you missing something? No?
Nope.
Okay, there was
we're
a
good,
puzzle
thank
book
you.
there.
No, thank you.
Thank you. And we've recently completed the creative problem-solving exercise that actually was adopted by the town. And I would at this time like to acknowledge the support and expertise we've received from the town of Pelham. And initially, Vicki started us off, and Nancy showed us the way, but I really want to emphasize that you have in the staff member Jordan Mamoletti, a wonderful facilitator who looked at 14 people at the first meeting, and or the second meeting, and took us through that exercise. And I want to say that we had 57 items that we thought we could do, and everyone's looking at each other. In the next meeting, Jordan used her expertise with the help of Martha, who's been just unbelievable on supporting our committee, and we dovetail into the next part that I'm going to speak about. So I think you'll tell our committee you've sold us on that process when we read about it in our local weekly as to how that works for the things you're doing for the town. So continuing on, having done that exercise, this has provided the committee a move forward action in establishing goals, priorities, and initiatives. I know you have this handout, but if it helps, and also other people that are attending tonight, you'll see where Jordan took us, and it's a little scary, but anyway, just a reminder, the purpose is to serve, this committee, to serve in an advisory capacity to the, to the Pelham Town Council and staff on matters that impact quality of life and provide solutions through the lens of Pelham senior residents. This is where we got to finally, and we're pretty proud, and as chair, I was over the top, because you have to build a relationship, as you would know, and so we move forward, and now we have our goals, priorities, and initiatives. And I'll just comment on them. I want to say they all intertwine. So even though they stand alone, even this afternoon at a subcommittee, we're drawing lines where they all cross over. We want to be an advocacy group for seniors. In other words, if there's something happening maybe from provincial government around seniors or federal, can we be assistant to the town by coming back with possibly how we feel about it as seniors and supporting what you're doing and what we need. Increased support in senior programs, I mentioned that before, how hopefully we can help promote, cross-promote, and help others to take part. Increased public transportation in Pelham. Now, I'll make that statement. That doesn't mean we're going to increase as a committee. We want to work along with council. What can we do to get things happening? And we know that's high on your list down the road. And we also are aware that it's been tried. But how can we work? And in the black, you'll see some identified tasks that we have on hand. Create a mechanism for research, information, and fact-finding. We need to find out and engage our residents, senior residents first, and find out what we want. We need to have up-to-date research, and sometimes we question that with all the bits and pieces we have. We want to create a link and bridge the gap between seniors and other groups. Can we get more volunteers? Can we help some of our service clubs increase their membership, or at least have volunteers come out? And I think you would come up with the same ideas, and I don't have to explain anymore. Next steps. Age-friendly research indicates a first step for active aging. A community needs to engage their stakeholders. The Pelham Senior Advisory Committee is proposing and has started planning a forum for late September 2014. And we hope to have that forum run, I'm going to say from 11-2, but we'd like to engage the seniors when they come in, the people that attend, and talk to them about this community and hopefully have some input possibly from some staff or some of the counselors as to questions we might ask, what's going on, what's good, what would they like to see, what are their creative ideas. But we also want to have a dynamite keynote speaker that we're working on because we've got to get a draw, and we know that to get the seniors out, and we know we need a place for accessibility, etc. So that's one of the things. In addition, we are partnering with the Niagara Age-Friendly Community Network and hosting one of the facilitated focus groups for seniors being held throughout June across the region. Pelham Senior Advisory Council has also promoted this opportunity to various groups in Pelham, and we've also notified the media about this. And that's being held this Wednesday in this well-used facility between 1:30 and 3:30. And I'm extending an invitation to you. And if your schedule, Mr. Papp, because you're frowning, sorry, Councilor Papp.
I'm trying to figure out my schedule.
Then I'm sorry, I'm asking all of you if you would please maybe turn to a neighbor or seniors that you know or people would be interested to come in. This is really, as I said, it's for the Niagara Age-Friendly Community Network, and they have a Trillium grant, and they're trying to gather information, and then you, I believe, have the schedule. There are focus groups in all 12 municipalities. As usual with money, they have funding, they have a short time frame, so they need to get all these focus groups done quickly. So we're trying to help them and assist, and that's one of our other linkages, is to link to age-friendly or seniors groups within Niagara, so that we're not repeating things, and we can find out best practices and what works and doesn't work. So I hope you'll think about coming and at least drop in. So I believe the Pelham Senior Advisory Committee is ready to put a stake in the ground. So now the ask. As you can see within my remarks and the information in your meeting package, Pelham Senior Advisory Committee has embarked on goals, priorities, and initiatives that include support of no cost, low cost, and funds to reach our objectives. On behalf of the Pelham Senior Advisory Committee, I'm requesting matching funds in the amount of $3,000 to support and kickstart our work. Please note, the request is for matching funds, as the committee is presently completing an application requesting $3,000 through the Seniors Grant Program of the Ontario Senior Secretariat through the Ministry of Citizen and Immigration. In addition, a task group from the members of the Pelham Senior Advisory Committee is working to identify potential additional sources of funding for future work and sustainability. In closing, thank you for the opportunity to provide a Pelham Senior Advisory Committee update and your consideration of the ask for funding to partner and support the committee's goals, priorities, and initiatives. Thank you.
Very much for your presentation. I can see that your skills as a teacher are still coming through and ensuring that we're all listening to you as we were moving along, myself and Councillor Papp and others, but and always there to help. So thank you very
I've always
much.
picked on Councillor Papp.
Oh,
Sorry.
very good, very good.
Single time.
And just perhaps we should introduce the other members of the senior advisory that are here as well. Susan Buckingham, Bob Hildebrand, Joe Bouchard, Sharon Cook, and Gail Hillier. Thank you very much for joining us. Actually, Ms. Reed, if you could just, there might be some questions from members of council.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So if that's okay, I'd open it up for members of council for questions. Councillor Kersey first. Go ahead,
Thank
sir.
you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I see in your ask that you're looking for matching funds. Now, what happens if you don't get the grant? Is there still an expectation that we would give $3,000, or would you be coming back for an additional $3,000 to?
No. Sorry, I should have waited till you ended. But no, we would not, if we had the $3,000 from council, we would be able to make the event and what we want to do for the small expenses on Wednesday and some other, we would make that work. My hope is if we get the other $3,000 that we don't come back to council for some time until we find sustainability. I think everybody on our committee is, I'll say, due diligent, and with that, we know that we just don't keep coming back here to do our work. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
So just as a follow-up, Mr. Mayor, if I may, so in other words, if you get the $3,000, this will bridge you over until the 2015 budget discussions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Presenter, Councillor Ribbiak.
Mayor, and thanks for your presentation, excellent. And the ask seems, in my mind, pretty realistic. I can think of all kinds of reasons why you would want it, but what have you determined would be the kinds of activities that you would want to use this money for?
Well, I think first of all, we have a vision of an event in September that we really know has to be heavily promoted to get our senior residents there, and maybe we have to even negotiate with some of our community business people for the bus. I'm gonna start, I won't say where, but, you know, to get seniors here, have it accessible, and get a number of people there. As Age Friendly says, the only way to get started, I'm not circling your question, but is to get our senior citizens engaged and ask them the questions. So we need this event, and then if they tell us things that are doable or that we can come back and present to you, that's where we're gonna go. I'm sorry I can't give you several things, because we have to talk to our residents first. So, does that help? Does anybody else, can I ask if anybody else wants to jump in from the committee?
Now you're calling a friend, right? You're calling a friend. Councillor Ribbiak, anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, you have an event in mind that you have prepared a budget for, and you anticipate a need for funds based on what you learned in that event?
Exactly.
Yeah, it seems doable. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Be prudent about how big we go with the event, but we're gonna have people register, you know, we're not just gonna, we're gonna watch our dollars, let's put it that way.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? I have a question. I think it's wise, and certainly obviously the whole group does, that you're engaging stakeholders in the community to try to find out exactly how you can serve them and how you can work together and be that link. Do you anticipate that following that you might relook at your strategic plan and your direction? Is that the intention?
That is definitely the intention. I should have said that. First of all, that brochure is put together as our first step
Yeah.
because the timelines to present tonight. So that's gonna get some, already we know some changes. We also believe that we will probably look at, in our terms of reference, we look at them annually and we may change. So changing that will also probably, I would say for sure, change our direction
Very
and some
good.
of our goals and priorities. We're
That's good.
stepping into a bit of new territory.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for your work to date, certainly putting that together and recognizing that that's where you want to start and that you want to hear from the community to determine where you're headed. Councillor Papp, I know you serve on the committee. Do you want to say anything else in addition to the thanks that I've offered?
Can I say something?
Please.
Well, they are, I have to tell you, Mr. Mayor and members of council, that they are the most dynamic group. Just incredible, going through the work with, very quickly, what Jordan was able to do along with Vic, and it was phenomenal how we got back. And then the other thing, I was just smiling when I walked in, we already got something done. So this is a group that I think we're resilient enough to be able to say that if things change and we need to refocus on other matters that are of sheer and utter importance to the seniors, that's exactly what this group is going to do. So I'm very confident that not only will look after the dollars, but we'll come back, things that need to be done that are in compliance and how can I say, integrated with what we're trying to do across the board. So I'm fully supportive of them, and I enjoy it. And you can tell it's there's certain days where I'm wondering if I'm aging. I just said good morning to Gail and to Joe as I walked in today. So it goes to show you where my mind was. So a good thing. So in the meantime, we think the $3,000 in the matching grants, the ultimate goal is, and I must add, I have something to give to Judy. I did talk to my ultimate mentor to this day. I owe most of my career to him, was Doug Ravelj, and he gave me the annual report of the Wellens, which I'll share with you, and they are more than happy to work with us. And I think, as I mentioned to you, many of the councilors, we are the only two councils in the regional municipality of Niagara, and Gail knows this, and the group knows, that are appointed by council. That shows you how important this is to them. So I'm very, very pleased with the work, and we're going to set the world on fire.
Thank you very much, Councillor Papp. I'm remiss here because Councillor Durley wanted to either ask a question or say
No,
something quickly.
just make a comment through you, Mr. Mayor. I have a great interest in this as well, and I've attended many workshops with members of this committee, and there certainly is a lot of information that can be used, and I'm glad you're taking initiative to bring folks here on Wednesday. Also, the seminar that I attended at AMO when I brought this information back, I think was a good starting point too, and I have great confidence that you folks are going to do a fantastic job, and I'm here to help as much as I can as well.
Thank you very much. And so this is a great start, as Councillor Papp said, and you're going to set the world on fire. We're going to hold you to those words, Councillor Papp. Thank you very much for your presentation and for those that have joined you this evening. I do have a motion. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Papp, that the information presented by the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee delegation regarding the committee's established goals, priorities, and initiatives be received, and the council hereby approves funds in the amount of $3,000 to support the work of this committee. Questions or comments? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your work. And we'll try to attend. I know members of council will try to attend on Wednesday, and also look forward to your forum in September. Thank you so much. Thank you. The next item is actually the report of our regional councillor, Regional Councillor Beatty. Thank you for joining us this evening. You have your umbrella in hand.
I needed it, sir. It's quite wet outside right now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council and staff. The report that you have, actually, I made a mistake. I thought that we didn't pass a motion to skip the meeting in favor of the provincial election. In fact, we did. I dressed up, got my report, got my package and so on, and it said the 19th of June. So this is a report that's a little premature because it's going to be finalized this Thursday. And I was quite spiffy dressed up for the market last Thursday. I've got two items that I'd like to report on in this report, and be willing to answer any questions on other items. Under planning and development, we held a statutory public meeting in the second bullet regarding Regional Policy Plan Amendment 3. That's the West Lincoln Official Plan Amendment regarding land swap exchange and lifting of mapping deferrals. This is a rather unique tool, and our acting commissioner of planning has been very, I think, ingenious in terms of working with the Township of West Lincoln to say, we're going to still have the same growth management plan. The cap is still the cap. But let's have lands that are already serviced rather than ones that aren't. Let's have lands that are contiguous to other lands that do the same function, et cetera. Let's group our employment lands together. And she said that up until recently, there's been a lot of support at the provincial level. Recently, I guess some new members on staff have come on and say, whoa, wait a minute. Like, what kind of precedent is this going to be? But it would be a wonderful tool for people to be, if you were capped in your overall growth, 2031, being able to swap off lands to maximize their use, and I suppose put them into development sooner rather than later is a think, a rather important thing to note. And as we move forward, we are expecting there will be support at the province, it's just that it is a rather unique tool and new to the province. The next one is at the very bottom of Public Health and Social Services. We've been mentioning the neonicotinoid issue on a number of meetings. George Scott, who's a beekeeper and a businessman in terms of Wainfleet, has been expressing significant concern. We have been somewhat concerned at the regional level as to what are our responsibilities, what can we do? We were first asked to do a total ban on non-agriculture use of the products. Problem I have with that is to say ban, first of all, are we the ones who can ban? And the answer turns out is no. But more importantly, how can you ban something but then not put $1 towards enforcement or monitoring? I think that would leave you somewhat liable. But it is an issue, and it's an issue that was brought up by members of the committee after the original report was done. Report itself showing what municipal, what federal, what provincial regulations are in place was very informative and very, very detailed. But we're saying that the issue is still there, it's still being talked about. There's mixed feelings on various continents in terms of how that issue is going to be addressed. I know there was a discussion, we had one of our FCM tours with that Vineland Research. It's an area of their concern. Pesticides always serve a function at that time, but they also bring with them side effects or unknown consequences. There's a far greater move towards biological determinants rather than pesticides, et cetera. But it's an issue that we wanted to make certain that our local MPPs, MPs, et cetera, are aware of this. The thing that George has found out is that the waters that go along the Walnut Canal Parkway, because they're above the drainage area, basically bees can thrive in great numbers. And he's looking at trying to establish a number of beeways along that area for the purpose of cloning colonies to be able to sell to other provinces, et cetera. But I just thought I'd put that down there because it is such an important issue. That's my report, Mr. Mayor. I'd be able to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beatty. Thank you very much for highlighting those two items. Do any members of council have any questions or comments on Councillor Beatty's report? Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two issues through you. Noticed in the corporate services that the 2013 budget, the capital works budget, was $655,000. The new one is $14 million and change. I'm assuming that that's connected to the Burgoyne Bridge, is it?
That's the residual. That wasn't the budget. That was what was left over for an uncompleted 2013 project. That wasn't the total amount of budget for 2013.
Oh, okay.
It's a residual of what was left.
Okay, because I just
Quite a
noticed
difference, yes.
quite a discrepancy in those numbers. It was confusing, so that clears that up. Also, I just wonder if I could get a paper copy of that report on the, I'll try to say this, neonicotinoids, or the thing affecting the bee population.
Be happy to do that. I'll do it electronically, Mr. Mayor, through the clerk's office and then to all of you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Others? Questions? Thank you for raising the issue about the West Lincoln official plan. I think the interesting thing that many will be watching is with regards to this land swap. First of all, there's no compensation proposed. So you're taking lands out from one area and putting it into another. So I found that interesting. The other is that certain lands are not included. They keep using this word net lands, net new land, 60 hectares of net lands. And they're actually taking out a PCB laced site. There's 10 acres, I think, or maybe it's larger, out of the urban boundary, and then they're swapping that in so that they can then say, well, we're taking that out of the Smithville urban boundary and adding it on. That could have ramifications for brownfield sites across the region and elsewhere through the province. And then the other is that they're not including in their calculation of the urban boundary significant wetlands or provincially significant woodlots. Now, they do say that that's consistent across Niagara, but I think the lands that were included, for example, in the East Vaughan Hill area were added, and all those lands that are provincially significant are still in the urban boundary. So it's an interesting test case, and it may well be a precedent-setting one. So we'll see what happens. It will eventually get to the Ontario Municipal Board in July, and we'll see what happens at council. I think there's going to be lots of activity at council on it on Thursday.
Great. While we're on that topic, I should mention that I would like to come back at some point in time before we get into the fall and election time period. We're coming up to the 2015 review, not only of the Greenbelt, but also the Escarpment Commission plan. And I've got a report for this Thursday, significant remapping of the Niagara region. doesn't currently have the municipal boundaries. I'm asking the GIS people to do that and to come back to you, because I think if we want to do something with regard to our ongoing concern with Fonto Kane Delta, and perhaps straighten out or better define, because it's zig, 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 zig like this in terms of the boundary as it is now. There are 4 categories of protection, and I'll get that report to you as well after this Thursday's meeting.
That's a Niagara Escarpment Commission meeting.
For what's being proposed currently, but if this council wants to have a more in-depth session, I'd be very pleased to arrange that with the planners, and you may in fact want to do some initiatives on your own as a council. It was hard for me, as a member of the Escarpment Commission, to find out that only the north end of Marlene Stewart Street Park was defined as escarpment protection. That is not what I think you would think as you're driving, down from the top of the hill. So we may want to have some areas of looking at, the same as the green belt that is open for definition or redefining the boundaries. The same would be true for the Niagara Escarpment Commission. There's something that, as we're approaching the fall term, we may want to look at in some
Okay.
depth.
Thank you very much. We look forward to receiving that. Anything further? Thank you very much, Councillor. It has been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the Regional Councillor Beatty's report of June 16, 2014 be received for information. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Now we move to minutes. It has been moved by, thank you, it's been moved by Councillor Rivyak, seconded by Councillor Durley. The following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Minutes of the special meeting of council of June 2nd and minutes of the regular meeting of council of June 2nd, 2014. Any errors or omissions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next, we move to consent agenda items to be considered in block. Are there any items that members would like to lift for separate consideration? Okay, there being none, it's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the following consent agenda items be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. 1, recommendations of Committee of the Whole meeting of June 2nd, 2014. The Architectural Design Advisory Committee terms of reference as amended at that meeting. The public meeting under the Planning Act, which was held on June 9th, 2014. Thank you, Councillor Rivyak, for covering that. Minutes of the Committee of the Whole of June 2nd, minutes of the Committee of the Whole of June 9th. Staff reports of a routine nature for information or action. There are a few. The first is the 2013 Building Department Fee Annual Report, and the motion is that we receive it for information. The Water E-Billing Contest information, and the recommendation is that we receive it for information. Pre-qualification of architects for design of a community center, and again, that we receive it for information. Information from regarding the multifaceted Community Center Advisory Committee, and information about the multi-center community center cost comparison, single ice pad versus double ice pad configurations. The recommendation is that we receive that for information as well. And finally, action correspondence, sorry, not finally, but action correspondence of routine nature, a letter from the Pelham Band Shell Concert. And the motion is that we receive that and that we approve the request contained therein. We have information of correspondence item regarding the Ridgeville Post Office and the change in their hours. And then we have 2 committee minutes for information, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council minutes of April 29th and Committee of Adjustment minutes. Comments, questions on any of those items? Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question on item 11.3.5, which is the report comparison of the single pad, double pad function within the multipurpose community center. And looking at the spectator seating, the first rink at 250 and the second rink at 550. I'm thinking that if we had more seats available, it would give us a little more opportunities to have a revenue flow into this with some different things. And I'm thinking that although this is a preliminary and we are receiving it for information, that we should give some attention to that and research around. I do think that we should have at least one rink with more than this in the number of seats. And that's a comment that I'm making through. And if some of my colleagues may have some input on that as well. But I have a concern that yes, that would be good enough for our regular house league hockey and you know, for the home show and that type of thing where you don't need seats at all. But if you do want to have something in a spectator type, attracting people to come, that this number of seats really doesn't work on it, and I think that would limit us in some of the possibilities that we could have in using this facility, and you know, could affect the sustainability and the income flow that may result from events that we can hold in this thing. So just for that, I'd like to perhaps give that a little more attention when we get down to the short strokes on that one.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Others on that particular report? Counselor, on that report, Counselor Papp?
Yes,
Counselor
on that
Kersey, go
report.
ahead.
You want to go, Gary?
No, go ahead,
Not
Counselor.
on that one.
Oh, I concur with Councillor Durley, and I have talked to some people that are involved in the construction operation of ice facilities, and quite frankly, and we'll work through it. They looked at that the initial arena should really be somewhere between 12 and 1,500 seats. So that number is one that allows you to attract many different components, but I do agree that the capacity for the seating has to be increased in that, for the primary facility itself. So maybe some more additional work and investigation can be done. In noting, there's a couple of municipalities that recently completed facilities, and that's exactly where they're at.
Okay, thank
So
you.
that's just a matter of, I guess, suggestion, and then we can validate one way or the other what we need, but increased seating capacity, particularly for a primary facility, is essential.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think maybe for reference, do staff know the capacity, the seating capacity now roughly as Ms. Van Ravensway?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's roughly 300,
Right. 300 currently,
about
okay.
it.
So what's
300, yeah.
what's been recommended on the first rink is to essentially build it to that similar spec, and then the idea is on the second one to make it a little bit bigger. Councillor Papp is indicating that perhaps it be reversed, and Councillor Durley is indicating maybe it should be bigger. I'm going to ask the CAO to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to comment on that, the number of seats in this report isn't recommendations per se. It's simply to say, here's the number of seats so that we can calculate a cost. The actual design will take place if council approves the architectural design process. That's where all that will be hammered out. So it's a point noted, and something that we'll carry forward.
Okay. Thank you. Any others to that? Okay. Councillor Kersey, you had another item. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I have a couple, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'd like to ask the treasurer, we're about 50% through the year, and this question is pertaining to 11.3.1, 2013 building department fees. In the report, you alluded to the fact that there's going to be a restoration of the reserve. And I just wondered, are we on track to restoring the reserve as we move forward through 2014? Like, are we starting to see an accumulation?
Madam Treasurer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Up until the point that this report was being drafted, discussions with the chief building officials that suggested that the building permits were exceeding expectations to that point in time. We were not going to replenish the reserve in full for 2014. It's the anticipated growth that's coming in the next couple of years. It's going to help it get back on track to you know, a positive position, and then what the projections are with respect to the development charges and so forth with some of these bigger developments coming in should help.
Councillor?
Just as a follow-up to that, so reading from that, there's not an anticipated further drawdown on our deficit reserve for 2014. It's anticipated that we'll finish the year either at par or there might be a slight positive.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was a projected deficit once again that was proposed and approved at budget time for 2014. We are monitoring it to stay within at least that number. Given staff changes and stuff like that, all sorts of things impacted, you know, CPP items that need to be paid out mid-year and stuff that were not anticipated are things that might affect that. But, you know, I'm working with Terrence, and we'll work with the new CBO as well to reduce some of those other expenditures in the department to help make sure that that stays on target.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? Any other items? You said you had a couple.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think 11.3.3 and 11.3.4, my question's basically twofold. Number one, I wondered what criteria were used to whittle down the list of 14 or 15 applicants down to 4, and I wondered if those criteria could be brought before council so that we would have an understanding of what criteria were applied. I don't think that exceeds our position and doesn't impugn staff's judgment.
Mr. CEO?
We use our procurement policy to go through the process, Mr. Mayor, and we're happy to circulate that to all members of council for their reference.
Okay, thank you. And the second item?
So, along that same line, Mr. Mayor, if I may continue, were there specific criteria to address the needs or the projected needs of the building that we were considering? Or did we use just general criteria at this point?
You, Mr.
Madam
Mayor.
Treasurer?
I apologize, the chart was copied in there. If you look at about the fourth paragraph down, it says the evaluation criteria was contained within the document, and it states that it's following, but somehow it's not there. It was copy and pasted straight from the document, so somehow it's been cut out. I don't know if it didn't, it's not appearing. But the criteria was established criteria that are used for the pre-qualification of architects, and they were straight from the Architects Association, what is a typical type of, the years of experience, the type of buildings they've done that had to be consistently the same. This would be a first-time building. The type of timelines that they were able to keep, and then we also used referencing as a criteria component as well. I think that was worth about 10% of the original criteria. I can share it with all of council. It was supposed to be in this document. I apologize for that.
Okay, thank you.
And perhaps not only could it be shared with council, but perhaps the clerk can figure out where the gremlins were and include it in the minutes of the report, or the minutes of the meeting. Thank you.
And just a further follow-up, Mr. Mayor, I just wondered what the role of the committee that we've just established will be in whittling that list down further. Will the committee be involved in that process as they determine the needs and the configuration that the various user groups want? Will they then have a role in determining what architect would be chosen at that point?
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In answer to the councilor's question, yes, there would be in an advisory capacity. So it would be a process of vetting the 4 pre-qualified firms and making a recommendation to council.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any others? Just on that, and I think I probably should have, well, I guess this is raised under the terms of reference, really, to that, which really speak to it. It's not overtly said in the terms, but Mr. CEO, I would presume that all those meetings are open to the public, will be publicized on our website, should people want to participate or witness them, et cetera. So can we just hear a little bit more about that, how you envision that to work?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The advisory committee meetings will be open to the public, so any member of the public, member of council, are more than free to observe and listen, provide input to community members. Also, we hope that the members representing organizations will go back and seek input from their larger organizations they belong to, like minor hockey or a club in the community, etc. And that we will post on, we'll handle this much the same way as we handle the Heritage Committee, for example. We'll post the meeting dates in advance, and it'll be fully accessible, both meeting minutes and observing meetings in person if anyone so wishes.
Okay, thanks. Just to the Heritage Committee, I think they keep their own minutes. Who would be keeping the minutes of this?
That's yet to be determined. We would hope it would be a member of the advisory committee, but if needed, we can provide a resource for that.
We may wanna think about that.
Oh, yeah.
That the town would in this case, because there's interactions with the architect. Okay, thank you. Anything further to the terms of reference there that are also included? Okay. Oh, Councilor Rivak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, I know that the terms of reference for the committee came up in 11.1, I think it was, 11.2, minutes approval.
Yep, that's where we are.
That's where we are. Just wanted to clarify that those terms of reference can be modified if we as a council feel that it's necessary in order to facilitate a speedier or more efficient process. So obviously, time is going to be of the essence. A large committee that diverse might take longer or might want to take longer than is comfortable for us in terms of this process. Just want to be sure that we have some ability as we go through to modify those terms of reference if necessary as we go through.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, to the councillor's question, council is free to change, alter, amend, rescind any terms of reference that they've put into place. So that's at council's discretion at any time. As far as timing goes, I think that my experience has been that there's probably less meetings from an advisory committee than one might think initially. It is a meeting with the architect to first formulate what sort of the wish list items are. The architect typically will go away, they'll do some design, they'll come back, consult, and you go back and forth several times to make sure that you're getting the details right. And that's really the role of the advisory committee, is the details. So whether it be the placement of player benches in relation to a change room from minor hockey's point of view, to what type of facility would an arts and culture group need in a multi-purpose space, those are the sorts of things that we'll be working through. So I don't expect that it will slow things down. I'm expecting that they'll move quite well.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. That works for me. Thank you.
I'm just going to add, Mr. CEO, I mean, we've done a lot of work with the business case, et cetera, so you said formulate. No doubt a lot of it will be looking at what's been done. Is that correct?
That's correct. You already have a very good framework. If council were to go ahead for the design of a multifaceted community center, I would expect that the parameters of that would be what have been outlined and recommended in the leisure plan. So you're not starting from scratch saying, you know, let's do a grand monument and scale down. You're saying we're interested in these components, now go and design those components so they maximize the usability of a facility, and that would be the goal.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anything further on that item? Okay, there being none. Did you have another item, Councillor?
Just one more, Mr.
ahead.
Mayor, and my comments are without prejudice. The Font Hill bandshell letter, little late in the game, kind of puts our back up against the wall, and you know, when we're faced with the first bandshell concert being this week, I think, and we received the letter at this late date, I think is kind of untoward and shouldn't happen in the future. The other thing, Mr. Mayor, I was wondering whether we should include, I believe the town pays for the SOCAN fees, and whether that should be included in that issues for full disclosure.
Ms. Van Ravensway? The second item first, and then the first item.
First item, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is true. The town does pay for their SOCAN fees, and it should have been listed.
And what's the quantum on that, do you know?
I believe SOCAN fees.
Hundreds or thousands?
Approximately $800.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. And then
Full
to
season.
the other item, is there any way to talk to the group at the end of the season and say we'd like the letter earlier?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. It is our intention at the end of, as we've said previously, we will be meeting with regard to all the operation of Thursday evening special events throughout here, and there will be a request coming in the fall,
Okay.
a report.
Okay, thank you. Mr. CEO is signaling me desperately that he wants to help Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To add to what Ms. Van Ravensway has presented, as part of the new permissive grants framework, we will be including a function that all of these types of requests are made in a scheduled manner so that council may consider them appropriately. There will be one window per year, and if the group does not apply within that window, they will not be considered.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, unless we amend the policy.
Which council may do so at any time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Durley.
Thank you,
To this
Mr. Mayor.
item?
Yes, through you perhaps to Ms. Van Ravensway. These three requests, is there anything different this year than we've been doing since they started 9 years ago?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, this is basically everything that we normally do, other than, as you said, the SOCAN fees are not on here that we covered.
Further to that, and, is it necessary for, if this is a protocol or policy and something that we do anyway, is it necessary that this does come to council? Could it not be included in some of the routine stuff that we're trying to get staff, to give staff the authority to work on? Because, like, in fact, if this is the way it is, does it have to come to us every year because it's always the same? Just a question.
Thank you very much. I think it is under consent, so normally, unless the counselor raises it, which a counselor is allowed to do, it wouldn't be discussed, it would just move through. And I think we heard already from the CAO about the permissive grant policy. Mr. CAO, anything to add to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would recommend that a sizable in-kind and financial contribution to any organization go through the permissive grants policy if, in fact, council approves it. It's one thing to request a small facility for a day or two for an event, but to request a significant amount of the town's infrastructure for the course of a summer, I think does require some scrutiny on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. And I would, I'm just going to build on what Ms. Van Ravensway in answering your question. I think the town has become more and more, I'll say, involved and active with the band shell because it's overwhelming success. So I can recall sitting around this table, for example, talking about whether we should put a washroom or not. Well, now it's, now it's standard. So, and indeed, we may well even consider constructing one in the park as opposed to using a portable one. So I think some of these things have changed through the years to the better, and certainly adding additional picnic tables, and because there weren't thousands and thousands of people when the band shell started 9 years ago. It's only through their efforts and of those great volunteers, and also the town working in tandem with them, and along with the farmers market, that it's been such a huge success. So we hope that we'll have to double the number of picnic tables next year, and because of the overwhelming success of the supper market and other activities. Are there any other items under the consent agenda? There being none, I'm going to call the question on those items. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you for that. Good conversation. My report next. Next is the mayor's report. Just wanted to highlight a few items. I thought it was very interesting, and I certainly have fun doing it every year. What they call at AK Wig School, the grade 1 class, in other years grade 2 class, called Our Town Tour. They have toured the fire hall before. They tour the post office. They tour the library, and they also tour this room. If things were a little, I'm sure staff set it up properly, but the students sat in our chairs, and they had different roles, so they knew which ones were the counselors and which was the CAO and which was the clerk. They were marveling at the large tome that they had to consider with the Municipal Act and the play day money. It wasn't real money, Madam Treasurer, but the play day money that we left at the place of the treasurer, and the maps, and of course the fire helmet at the base of the fire chief, and a bulldozer for Mr. Mantle, etc. So it's a great event. Mr. CAO, yes, we had a little button for you about your activities and as the head of administration. So the button said, "Don't just stand there, do something." And they got a chair. At least their parents got a good laugh out of that. But it was great to have them in the room, and you'll see in the report the two items that they voted on. One group wanted an outdoor ice rink, and the other wanted a crossing guard at Regional Road 20 and Hay Street. So they approved those. They did have a good debate on it, though, so it was a very good event. So thanks very much to members of AK Wig Grade 1 class for visiting Town Hall. I do want to highlight that there is another farmers market in town, and that's that's occurring at St. Anne's Church on Wednesday evening. So I'd encourage all to attend. I was there and had the pleasure of being at the first one, which was on June 4th. I did have the honor of attending and representing council at the annual memorial for members of the Fawn Hill Firefighters Association, and it's always a moving tribute to honor those that have passed away. That was held on June 8th. And also it was a great time, along with Councillor Papp, golfing at Penn Lakes for their the Chamber of Commerce golf tournament. A wonderful event put on by the Chamber of Commerce. So thank you very much for that. Those are my items for report. And it has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King, that Mayor Augustine's report for Council June 16th be received for information. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Ribbiak has a report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to take the opportunity to remind council and all others who may see or read of these proceedings that at the end of this week, just in time for summer, the Town's Community in Bloom Committee will hold its 13th annual Communities in Bloom garden tour. This year, the garden tour will cover 8 gardens throughout Pelham, so we'll get a good chance to see what grows here and how well it looks. It's a little earlier this year, so we can take advantage of the best part of the growing season. The tour runs from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. Tickets are available at $10 each. They can be purchased at the Pelham Town Hall, Rice Road Greenhouses, and Vermeer's Garden Center. There will be some entertainment along the way for those who participate through local professional pianist Frank Cron. And refreshments will also be served. So just wanted to remind us that we can celebrate the start of summer by stopping and smelling the roses.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We look forward to the tour coming up this Saturday. Thank you for your report. Now we move to staff reports requiring action. The first is regarding the Regional Agreement for Fire Investigation, a tracking application. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the issue summary report, Regional Agreement for Fire Investigation Tracking Application be received, and the Council authorize the Town of Pelham's participation in the joint agreement, and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw for consideration by Council at their next meeting on July 7th. Questions, comments? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our chief. Chief, can you explain to me what the intent of this is? I mean, is it to try and keep tabs on arsonists that might be at work in the region, or does it go beyond that?
Chief?
Mr. Mayor, actually, yes, it goes beyond just particular persons of interest. It could be trends through municipalities. We're really restricted in the amount of information that we can share amongst ourselves. And so, you know, if we have certain types of fires, certain extended devices, and it goes on quite a long list, so we can compile this information in this database, which is managed by the region. Any of our fire investigators will be able to access it, and they'll be able to do research in that database and looking for similarities, commonalities, things like that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the ultimate purpose of gathering this data and looking for commonalities is what?
Well, it would help us, the very initial part of on our education side of things is that if there's trends through municipalities happening, maybe our target groups are high-risk groups like seniors or children, certain types of buildings, reoccurring fires. If we do have say an arsonist or a person that's a fire setter that lives in Niagara Falls, and Niagara Falls has kind of been tracking through the police, and they kind of know who this person is, and they can't catch him. And then when he moves to, say, Pelham, Niagara Falls can't phone me and say, hey, you know, Mr. Smith just moved to Fawn Hill. Now we'll be able to do this type of thing. So, and there's not necessarily just names, it could be patterns.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments for the chief? Chief, fires can be very, very devastating for families. And even just knowing that there's information here, I see that there's all kinds of things in terms of access and confidentiality and not intellectual property, sorry, MFIPA, which is the Municipal Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy. So can you just talk a little bit about how the information is secure and maintained? So if that was a situation, for instance, that you're talking about Mr. Smith moving somewhere, I mean, hopefully it's as very, very small group that would know that, and only for specific reasons. Can you just comment on that?
Mr. Mayor, yes. I said it will be managed and maintained and secured by the region. The need for this participation for them to commit to the funds to do this. It will be, the chiefs actually authorize the access to it, so we will designate ourselves and possibly a head of fire prevention or somebody in your municipality. It could be a number of people depending on the size of your city. They'll have logins, they'll have it all be password protected, and they'll have to justify what they're doing. It's similar to police too. They just can't start accessing info database without a justification. So you have to be actually doing an investigation, or you have to be justify your means of access. So it'll be very restricted.
Okay, good. So it's, in general, and again, Councillor Kersey was trying to tease this out, I think, in general, it is for, what we're going to see it for is more for trends, is that correct? And training, I can see that, certainly the benefit of that the training that the firefighters would do would say, look, here's a new trend, something we should train on.
That, or another thing that looks at is we've had quite a trend of construction fires in the region in the last 10, 15 years. And we've had certain persons that like to light up construction sites where there's certain, like the framing stage. So those things there have allowed us to restrict builders on what they can build. Like, we won't allow them to build 10 townhouse units in a row. They have to build a section and then a fire break and then a section. As a result of that type of information and what we share, it helps us kind of better plan and do a better risk assessment on as far as how things are going to play out.
Okay, thank you. I guess the final question again on information, if information was breached, what would be the avenue that somebody would follow through on? Do you know? If somebody doesn't follow this guideline or this
Give me
zone.
kind of an instance where what.
Well,
you're
if,
talking about as far
again,
as breached.
the situation you said, and one of the few people that you give access to says, you know what, goes to the wherever and says, by the way, did you know that, da-da-da-da-da, and, you know, it kind of gets out in the community.
Well, as far as employment goes, corporation, the person that breaches that would be subject to discipline, but as far as the recourse of the person affected, I really would have to go through litigation. I don't know what the recourse on that would be, but the liability issues would be that. We don't.
So it's similar to perhaps other things. It says here they have to comply with the Municipal Freedom of Information Protection Privacy Act. So whatever is in that act.
That and the
Okay.
information, so.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Are we ready for calling of the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. The next item has been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King. The council received the issue summary report regarding a correction to bylaw 1136, which was from 1987, as amended under section 30 exceptions, and the council consider the revised bylaw as presented on this evening's agenda affecting the modified RM1 zone in the Wayland Heights subdivision. Questions, comments? I might call on the director to just kind of explain this first off. You might answer some of the questions before they are given. Mr. Director.
So back in 2008, a bylaw came forward for this development. There was a technical issue about the exterior side yard that was resolved, but an oversight of the interior side yard was not picked up. The bylaw came back and it was approved minus the interior side yard issue. Subsequent to that, another bylaw came forward on this development, but it didn't include these lands. The applicant is now looking to develop these lands, and we've noticed that the interior side yard issue had not been resolved as due to an administrative error and oversight back in 2008. So we're trying to correct the situation very quickly to keep progress and development moving.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Questions for our director?
Thank
Councillor
you, Mr.
Kersey.
Mayor. My only question is, we've seen this now a couple of times on this subdivision. It's been back and forth. Have we looked at all the other zones in the subdivision and ensured that there were no further oversights so we could correct them all with one bylaw?
Mr. Glover?
We've talked to the applicant and the consultant. They're happy with all the rest of the zones. This is the only one to clean up. Okay. If I could continue, not that there won't be additional changes in the future, but that would be through a separate application, separate amendment.
Right, that's fine.
I think the councilor's questions were for errors or administrative errors, those kind of things, so. Okay, thank you. Any others? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Are we gonna do the bylaws? Sorry, we're just moving paper around here. We're supposed to be paperless. There we go.
Just the bylaws aren't listed, so
Okay.
I'll just read it quickly.
I'm going to ask you to read it. So I'm going to ask the clerk to read it. It's not on the sheet here, so Madam Clerk, do you have it?
It's moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now to read a first, second, and third time and do pass the same, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Bylaw 3509, being a bylaw to appoint Michael Zimmer as Chief Building Official and Bylaw Enforcement Officer and Property Standards Officer for the Corporation of the Town of Pelham. Bylaw 3510, 2014, being a bylaw to appoint Mr. Terrence Glover as a Municipal Law Enforcement Officer for the Corporation of the Town of Pelham. And Bylaw 3511, 2014, being a bylaw to amend the Town of Pelham zoning bylaw 1136, 1987, as amended for the Wheeland Heights subdivision just discussed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate that. Mr. CAO, can you just comment on the first bylaw regarding Mr. Zimmer?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we're pleased to announce that we have made an offer after doing our search process to Mr. Zimmer to become, as you were in the bylaw, our new CBO. He comes to us with 17 years of experience as a CBO, with his most current experience being in the municipality of Trent Lakes, where he held the position of CBO. He will commence his duties on site tomorrow if this bylaw is approved, for one day only this week, in order to help push through some permits that we have as to keep the operation going. He'll return to his current position. The following week, he'll come back for a day. He'll do some more permit work for us, finish out his second week with his current employer, and then resume the following Monday full-time for us in our operation here. So, again, we're thrilled. The process that we undertook, it was we were looking for the right person for the position, that with an emphasis on customer service, and with the motto of rolling out the red carpet and not the red tape. And I think that Mr. Zimmer exemplifies that motto very well, and we're very excited to have him on board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO. Any questions, comments regarding the bylaws? No. Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you for your help, Madam Clerk. There are some in-camera items to discuss, and as we generally do, it's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Papp, that Council recess the in-camera portion of the meeting and reconvene immediately following the committee meeting scheduled for this evening. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is recessed. Thank you.